Hi, everybody. Welcome to Women in Retail Talks. I'm Melissa Campanelli. I'm the co-founder of the Women in Retail Leadership Circle. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Karen Mangia, the Vice President of Customer and Market Insights at Salesforce, as well as author of the newly published book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You, published by Wiley. We are so excited to have you here, Karen. When I got the release about this book, I was like, how perfect. This is sort of an issue that everyone's dealing with right now. So I'm so excited to chat with you. And in our discussion today, Karen will talk about the genesis of her book, and we'll also present some clear work at home strategies for productivity, collaboration, and career impact. So thank you for joining me today, Karen.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Great. So let's get into it. Before we get started about your book, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and your role at Salesforce? I'm sure a lot of our listeners use Salesforce or are very familiar with it.
Well, we are grateful for all of the Salesforce customers who are in your listening audience today. And I have the fantastic pleasure at Salesforce of spending time with our customers all over the world to understand the challenges they're trying to solve and thinking through what role Salesforce can play in doing that, as well as establishing a really compelling vision for the future together. And that is an extension of that engagement with customers. I have the opportunity to share what we've learned in the form of books and blogs and keynotes to really bring people to the inside of what's trending now and connect people with each other to build a greater sense of community for solving some of these problems we all share.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's a great sort of understanding of how you came about writing the book. I guess you had heard from talking to the customers that working from home was obviously a hot topic. So is that sort of how you came up with it, and sort of, why did you write it?
Well, I'll never forget the time when I got a mysterious calendar invite. I don't know if this has happened to you. It's familiar people and a murky looking agenda. And in my case, it was two of our senior leaders putting a couple of us on a call and letting us know we were part of the new work from home task force back at the beginning of March. And within that construct, our charter was to think through building a plan to send all of our employees home simultaneously and not just address things like what kind of technology might people need or office chair, but really how could we enable them to show up at their best in this really uncertain time. And out of that, I started doing a blog about work from home as well. And believe it or not, I had another book already in progress that comes out in October called Listen Up, How to Tune Into Customers and Turn Down the Noise. And the beginning of May, I started talking with the publisher about what was coming next since I had submitted the manuscript. And we got to talking about working from home. And she said, working from home? How would you like to write a book about that? And so Wiley, which is the biggest publisher of business books in the world, actually pitched me on writing the book to just such an urgent need. And believe it or not, I wrote the book in just under 30 days. And from the time we signed the contract to the time I physically held that book in my hand was less than 90 days.
That's incredible. Being from the publishing world, I actually published a book way long time ago, and that is impressive. Oh my goodness, that's quick. Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions. Sort of, was it sort of a serendipitous idea that you wrote about this, and then COVID happened? But it sounds like they were sort of symbiotic and tied together. So that's really interesting. So I know that the book outlines some clear strategies for productivity, et cetera, that I mentioned earlier. I'd love to dig into those a little bit. So, I'd love for you to kind of give our listeners who are all working from home some ideas that you talk about around home offices or time management, whatever you'd like to talk about would be helpful.
What I've noticed is when we started working from home, it might not have been your first choice. I mean, you might be listening right now thinking, wow, I don't love this. At the beginning of the pandemic, I observed a lot of adrenaline, this mindset of let's do whatever it takes to keep our families and ourselves safe and to do our jobs at however many hours a day that takes. And we all know that adrenaline eventually wears off. And I think that gave way to the honeymoon is over. I mean, working from your sweatpants in your bed might sound great at first. And eventually this is not setting me up to be healthy or to perform at my best. And now I find people are asking, how long is this going to last?
Mm.
And inherent within that question are a couple of things. One, a sense of universal burnout. And second, as people accept that this is here to stay for at least a little bit longer, it's about what adjustments do you need to make now? I mean, maybe you're sitting in the really uncomfortable dining room chair or the antique rocking chair, and every day your back hurts. Is that really sustainable in helping you show up at your best for the next 6 months? And the other area I'm noticing that people are really focused on is something that I like to think of as your laptop is your pantry. You know, you walk by and you start snacking on it, right? With your you're right, with your pantry, it's the chips, it's the cookies that maybe somebody in your household baked, last night's leftovers, and grazing all day long is not a healthy habit. And the same thing is happening with work. You have that laptop, it's in your space all the time. So you walk by and you think, just one more email, just one more PowerPoint slide or blog or tweet. And suddenly you're grazing all the time, wondering where your nights and weekends have gone. And so one of the core principles to set yourself up to be successful and to be more productive is putting routines, rituals, and boundaries in place that help you put and keep work where it belongs.
I've heard that, and that's a great way to put it as well. I'd love to talk a little bit too about Zoom fatigue and and burnout, which you sort of touched on the burnout part, but what about Zoom fatigue? I mean, is there any tips about what to do there? Do we sort of what we did today in some ways? Like, do you have to be on the phone? Do you have to be on Zoom all the time? Do you have any thoughts there?
Well, I think about how to look at what's on your to-do list and what's on your calendar and how to find a path forward where you can reclaim some energy. And I found that 3 questions and a bonus question help with the filter of where do you need to show up urgently or at your best and in what mode. And the questions are, does it have to be me? Does it have to be me right now? And the bonus question, does it have to be a meeting? What I find is we get this Zoom fatigue because we start to think that everything has to be a meeting, and maybe it doesn't. And so, if it has to be a meeting, what's the shortest amount of time you could accomplish that meeting in? Is there another way? Can you use some collaborative documents to maybe reach a decision or do some upfront work that takes a 60-minute meeting down to 15? That fatigue happens because we're in this always on mode without stepping back to think, is there a better way? And the reality is, if we treat everything as if it's equally important, then nothing actually is important. So how do you reserve that video Zoom meeting for a time when that's what is needed to either convey your message, handle a difficult issue, or get a decision made?
That's great. That's that's so helpful, I think, for a lot of people listening today. So in terms of the book itself, would you say that it's focused more on workers or, managers / supervisors, or both? And if both, how are their experiences working from home different? I guess what I'm trying to get at is sort of what about managing from home, which a lot of our listeners are probably doing.
Middle managers are the battleground of whether or not work from home will succeed. And here's why I say that. The middle manager is the one who is interacting with employees on a day-to-day basis and getting a pulse for how they're really doing. That middle manager is also the one that senior leaders are counting on to continue to deliver outcomes. And what really strikes me is thinking back to my own years being in middle management, I've never worked so hard to have people think I was doing nothing, right? And One of the things that happens in the book, yes, there's a whole continuum of, we're all thinking about things like burnout and boundaries and enabling better collaboration. And those, transcend whatever job role you're in. I do have a couple specific sections in the book that are about how to build a successful work from home culture for managers. And then also a great study that's called Leading the Leaders. And in that study, Seth Madison, a friend of mine who led that, had asked managers to rate 434 attributes of what mattered most to them with their employers. And top of the list was certainly relationships, but closely following was one word that I think we really need to explore on all sides of the conversation, which is ownership. Middle managers said, we need to revisit, what do I own? And how has that changed during this time? And also, what else could I own that helps me not feel so isolated and invisible, and maybe gets us out of the loop of doing a bunch of these meetings? And that topic around ownership spans, whether you are an individual contributor or the most senior executive in an organization, because it's all about how do you empower people to have greater autonomy, greater decision-making authority, and more influence over the outcomes they're expected to deliver.
That's really clear. That's really helpful. I'd love to dig into that part as well, to that part of the book. So what about you personally? Like, what has been your experience working from home? Do you have any sort of success stories or anecdotes you could share about things you've used, or I don't know, funny stories or anything around your working from home?
Yes. Well, something that I realized was the first time I gave an interview about working from home was 2002. So I say that I was working from home before it was cool or coerced. And yet what I realized is in these last number of years of my career, I've really been a work from anywhere employee, traveling very frequently. And so it was an adjustment for me, not, the physical office experience, but the lack of variety. And so one of the things I realized about my own home office was how important it is to be able to see things that inspire you and kind of keep you grounded, or maybe help you get unstuck when you're having a tough day. So one of the adjustments that I made was to put my smile file on my desk.
What's that?
You might wonder about that. Yes, right? Yes. So I'm going to be honest with you. I have the 3 best goddaughters on the entire planet, and I'm absolutely biased before you ask. And one of the things that they did was, when they found out I was writing 2 books basically simultaneously, they wrote me a box of letters to inspire me, so that anytime I felt stuck, I could lift the lid of this very old school Hallmark looking box with colorful butterflies on the front, and I could merely select a letter and then open it and read it. So I'll give you an example. And picture, right, the little kid writing where the E is backwards and every letter is in a different color. And I'm just going to open one for you right now. This one's from Bryn. So she's the 9-year-old with the blonde pigtails and the purple cat eye glasses, who will charm you out of all of your root beer and your entire fortune, and you would be happy to give it to her. So it says, "Dear Aunt Karen, we miss you so much. Remember to be happy. Hope you have a good day. You are outstanding. Love, Bryn."
Oh my goodness.
What I realized was, hey, we're all having tough minutes. We all need a reset from time to time. And when I could see these little aspects of something that small, that tiny reset made me feel a little bit better. It was an adjustment to say, I can add some variety with what I see in my office, and I can add some inspiration, right? Something that reminds me that as critical as the situation we're in right now is and feels, there's still connection, there's still people, there's still hope.
That's a great story. That's great. I'd love to get a box of letters like that.
Maybe we should all start doing that, like a letter writing campaign for each other.
That's great. So in closing, in your opinion, since you're an expert in the subject now, I mean, what does the future hold from working from home? Do you feel like it's here to stay? Do you believe companies will have a hybrid model? Or in general, just your general feelings about it?
The future is flexible. And what I mean by that is about 70% of employees, when surveyed now, are saying that they would like the flexibility to move between their company or organization's office and their home office. And what it calls to mind for me is the experience of seeing a movie. Sometimes you might choose to go see a movie in a theater or in a group setting because you want the experience of the shared laugh or the shared scream or that big payoff together. And other times you may choose to consume that exact same content in your home. And that's really about the flexibility to choose. And that's what the future looks like, which is work still needs to be done, outcomes still need to be delivered. And both employers and employees are recognizing the value of offering flexible options that allow people to choose where they need to be, when they need to be there to show up at their best.
Great. So in some ways, it could be thought of as maybe a positive for a lot of folks, even though I know there's not a lot of positive coming out of COVID right now. But at least it's giving companies the knowledge of the fact that that could be a perk, for people to be able to be flexible.
We all enjoy choice. I think we would all rather choose what works best for us as opposed to having someone else decide that. So there certainly is upside. And, this can be a time of opportunity if we choose to see it that way.
Yep. Fantastic. Well, Karen, that's about all we have time for. I just want to let everybody know she's the author of the newly published book, Working from Home, Making the New Normal Work for You. That's published by Wiley. And as an FYI, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And it's going to be in store at Barnes & Noble when the stores open up across the country. I think many of them are open already. And I want to thank you so much, Karen, for joining me on this episode of Women in Retail Talks.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at womeninretail.com/podcasts for show notes. And Women in Retail Talks is also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. And make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review it. And until next time, this has been Women in Retail Talks.